Hello everybody, and thank you for joining us today. I'd like to welcome you to our Global In-Market series. Today is coming from the US. We will be providing you with market tips on how to navigate business globally. My name is Belinda Redman and I'm the Director of State Promotions for the Department of Trade and Investment, and I'm hosting it today. It is now my great pleasure to introduce you to the Honourable David Ridgway, the Minister for Trade and Investment.
Good morning, everybody. It's great to be with you, and it's great to see you and finally meet Regina. It's great. Thanks for joining us. As you know, we're in some unprecedented times with COVID-19 globally, and of course here in Australia, and of course absolutely we're feeling for our good friends in the US and the pressure that they're under. All the governments have put significant stimulus on the table, which I think is fabulous for all of us. We've got our state government put $1 billion towards the stimulus. The federal government now, I think their tally's up to about $320 billion, and of course the US government, I think it's only $2 trillion that they've put towards it. So we think there's a great opportunity now for, while this isn't as good as being there in person, a great opportunity to hear some updates from Regina about exactly what the market's doing in the US, and also for our existing exporters to learn a little more. So look, I won't speak any longer. Unfortunately, I do have a teleconference with Minister Birmingham and all of the other national trade ministers at 9:30 South Australian time. So if I disappear at 9:30, it's not that I won't answer your questions. I think it's important that I be on that teleconference with Minister Birmingham. So over to you, Regina.
Thank you, Minister Ridgway, and hello to everyone. I am brand new in the role, I should say, just over a month or so, and I am very happy to be here, and I look forward to giving this presentation with you. So first, we're going to look at, how did we get, to where we are today here in the U.S.? The U.S. confirmed its first case of COVID-19 on the 21st of January. 2 months later, the virus had spread to all 50 states. Due to the lowering of consumer confidence and the disruption in the U.S. supply chain, the OECD adjusted the U.S. 2020 GDP projections to 1.9%, down from 2.9%, which was forecasted in November of 2019. The COVID outbreak has impacted just about all segments of the U.S. economy. Due to travel restrictions, U.S. airlines have seen a turndown of more than 90%, as they're flying planes at 5 to 15% of capacity. The hotel industry is also suffering from the drop in the U.S. tourism. The American Hotel and Lodging Association indicates that the industry is losing about $1.4 billion a week. The healthcare industry is experiencing critical shortage of the N95 respiratory mask and the L3 surgical mask. In the shipping and freight industry, U.S. seaports are handling 20 to 25% less cargo, resulting in layoffs and reduced port hours. This means shorter pickup and delivery times of containers at the ports. There is an additional screening of cargo ships. If they're coming from China within 14 days of entering U.S. waters, ships can enter the U.S. as long as there are no sick crew members aboard. With international flights at a standstill, the freight industry estimates that it has lost about 85% of its air cargo space. To recoup some of the losses of revenue from passenger flights, many airlines are flying cargo-only planes between the U.S. and Europe at twice the cargo air rate. In response to the distressed businesses and financial support needed by citizens, President Trump signed a historical $2.2 trillion economic stimulus aid. And this is the largest stimulus package in U.S. history, which is about 10% of GDP. The aid package allocates $532 billion for big businesses, with $61 billion specifically for airlines, $377 billion for small businesses, $290 billion for direct payments to families, $290 billion for tax cuts, $260 billion for unemployment benefits, $150 billion for state and local stimulus funds, and $385 billion in a miscellaneous category, of which $126 billion is allocated for the healthcare industry. Though many businesses are closed as being non-essential, There are businesses that have remained open and operating as essential to the running of the country and supporting citizens. This slide shows the industries that are categorized as essential businesses by the Department of Homeland Security. So this includes federal and state offices and services, including post offices and airports, grocery and beverage stores, healthcare and pharmacy, energy, water, and sewage support, gas stations, and banks. As the country tries to slow the spread of the COVID-19 virus, additional safety measures are being implemented across the nation. More than two-thirds of the population, 218 million people, are under a stay-at-home or shelter-in-place directive. As the number of U.S. cases increase, states are implementing domestic travel bans that require citizens traveling from U.S. epicenters to self-quarantine for 14 days. On Monday, President Trump extended the federal social distancing guidelines from mid-April to the end of the month. As businesses are forced to close under safety directives, we are seeing layoffs, particularly in the hotel and restaurant and retail industries. Last week, over 3.3 million people filed for unemployment. The March Consumer Confidence Index dropped to the lowest level in 3 years. The drop has contributed to the rise in unemployment claims and the uncertainty of when the U.S. will recover from this economic crisis. In an effort to boost consumer confidence, the federal stimulus package does include support for families and small businesses. Key provisions are cash distributions of $1,200 for single adults making less than $75,000, $2,400 for companies who are making less than $150,000, plus an additional $500 for each qualified child dependent. Unemployment benefits have increased, and for the first time, self-employment and gig economy workers can apply for unemployment. Small businesses can apply for loans after they commit to keep staff employed, and those that honor this commitment through the end of the crisis will not have to pay the loan back. In addition to federal support, states and cities are offering loans to small businesses to help with business operations and to help with payroll. Industry has stepped in to support the economy as well. The grocery industry has been working nonstop to keep the shelves stocked. The industry is seeing an uptick in the online buying of groceries as a result of people panic buying and then not wanting to wait into the lines of, so they are going online to purchase their groceries. So it is projected that consumers will continue this trend of buying groceries online even after the economic recovery. The medical industry is supporting the community through treatments, testing, and just racing to find a cure. The Houston Methodist Hospital is the first in the nation to be approved by the FDA to transfuse donated plasma from recovered COVID-19 patients. Corporations are stepping up to help. General Motors is using its plants to produce much-needed ventilators for the medical industry. HEB is supporting Houston area restaurants. During the pandemic, HEB is committed to purchase weekly takeout meals for its employees at all 90 of its Houston area stores. And last Friday, the company spent $100,000 on meals. And as you've heard, the government and the community, we're making every effort to get the country back up and running in a safe time frame. But as we look ahead, we can see examples of opportunities that are coming out of the crisis. One being in digital health, where the government, medical personnel, and consumers will be looking for alternative methods to help with triage and diagnosis. In the stimulus package, Congress did allocate $185 million to support the healthcare community in rural areas. Personal protection equipment. Due to the shortage of N95 respirators, The US FDA is allowing the use of respirators approved under standards used in other countries that are similar to the National Institutes of Occupational Safety and Health, and the Australian standard is on this approved list. So, what do you need to do? What you can do is during this time is to stay in contact with your customers and partners. Communicate on a regular basis as often as possible. Be aware that it is likely the customer's business is heavily impacted as well. Stay in touch with your industry body and trade association. Be aware that in many events have been canceled or rescheduled. And check event websites for the latest information or sign up for alerts. You can also work on a recovery plan. A recovery plan can include the following elements: client relationship management, where you have a plan to keep in touch and keep engaged with existing customers. Also can look at ways to identify new customers and ways to interact with them. Risk management, where you look at supply chain vulnerabilities and also develop a business contingency plan where you examine how your business would operate under certain circumstances and how you would maintain contact with your customers and suppliers. And then also evaluate marketing channels, social media and webinars as platforms to promote products and then also to keep in contact and engaged with your customer base. DTI offers a range of support for South Australian companies, from export education to introduction to buyers. Please feel free to contact me or our TradeStar team to discuss your business needs. We're at the point of Q&A, so I will turn it back over to Belinda.
Thank you, Regina. Regina, a couple of questions have come through. The first one, considering that one of South Australia's main exports to the US is in the food and wine sector, is premium quality product, do you think that there will be a slower recovery for premium wines as compared to other sectors?
I don't anticipate there being a slower recovery for the wine sector. In general, since more people are home, actually online purchases of wine has ticked up. Here in the U.S., the wine sector, alcohol beverages, is actually classified as an essential business. So wine and liquor stores are still open, and people are able to make in-home purchases. What I think is going to be a greater impact on the wine industry, or premier wines in particular, is going to be the demographics of the consumer. U.S. wine consumption overall has been trending down. That's because millennials are not consuming wine as much, and the older generation is drinking less. So what we will be looking to do here in the U.S. is expand our customer base for premium wines.
Thank you. And just a reminder to those that are listening, you can send us a question. Please do so now as we work our way through them. Another question, Regina. What does the impact of the corona pandemic mean for sector or product opportunities?
Well, one of the key things that is coming out of this is that social distancing is causing people to move more so online. So there has been an uptick on activities in different sectors. Media, for example, online media access is up 46%. When we think of companies like Netflix. And then also, as I mentioned, consumers are buying more groceries online. And so online supermarket purchases are up 42%. Another thing that's interesting within the food and sector is a lot of people are getting a little bit more comfortable in purchasing online. Initially, when we started with this pandemic and people were doing panic buying, they were more focused on getting non-perishable goods like rice and beans. But in the last week, sales of fresher items are being purchased online, where fruits and vegetables are up 600% and meat, eggs, and seafoods are up 373%. So this is kind of in line of what the trend looks like it's going to be, that consumers are getting very comfortable with being online.
Thank you. A question here from Richard Vanderberg. Further to the last question, the previous question, are we seeing a reversal in the trend of premiumization as a result, people returning to cheaper wine as opposed to the more premium price points, i.e. $15 a bottle?
No, I don't think it's the case that they are going to cheaper wine. Um, Even in the research that I looked at as far as what people are buying now, just because they're buying at home doesn't, for their home consumption, doesn't necessarily mean that they're buying the cheaper wine. People buy what they want, and so it's just a matter of educating and introducing the South Australian wines to the market.
Thank you. A question from Will Sammy. You mentioned there is a shortage in the N95 respirator masks. This shortage with public hospitals, private or both? Sorry, is this shortage with public or private hospitals? Do you see an opportunity in this area?
There is an opportunity in this area. First, for the first part of the question, yes, the shortage is both. It's all around. So there is opportunity, particularly as I said, because of the crisis that we're under. The U.S. or FDA will consider standards that are approved in other countries. And Australia's standards, I don't have the exact numbers here, but the Australian standard is on the approved list. So that if that's something that you would like to pursue, I would be very happy to talk to you about that.
Thank you. Another question from Adriana O'Brien. Hello, Regina. Thank you for your presentation in terms of Education Stabilisation Fund you mentioned. Do you know how that money will be spent? Is it federal or state by state allocation?
I don't have the exact allocations. What happens a lot of times with this federal money, it is given at both levels. So for example, the funding for the small businesses, that is actually coming through the Small Business Administration, but the states have to be declared basically like a disaster area. So Texas has gone through that process. So now Texas businesses are able to access, that money. That is something that I can research for you and find out more information for you on that particular education package.
A question from Patrick Baker. Are there any changes in the US government's attitude towards imports overall? Will there be any factors making it more difficult other than the current crisis?
I think it's going to be, twofold. Um, because we've had some shortages in supplies, particularly like the N95 respirators and the surgical masks. For us in the U.S., 95% of that product is procured outside of the U.S. So there are two frames of thoughts. One, that we need to increase production here in the U.S., but then also we need to diversify the supply chain and look at other opportunities and other means to source products. So I think we're going to see a combination of both here in the market, where some people will be pushing for more made in America style products, but then also recognizing that we are a global economy, looking to see, what other ways we can diversify the supply chain rather than have the dependency on one particular country, which we kind of just saw in this circumstance where we had a high dependency for those masks, and then when we couldn't get them, then that created the crisis for us.
And our final question is from John Taylor. We understand that there is a shortage of surgical masks. What other products are in short supply in the US?
Paper products. Yeah, that is probably one of the bigger shortages that we're having. But according to the grocery, supply chain, it is not necessarily a shortage that is real. A lot of that is caused by the panic buying. So the stock that they normally have in place that would last, 2 months, people are going in and buying that in 2 weeks. So it gives the impression that there is a shortage. I think right now as a country, our biggest concern is for the medical staff because they don't have the proper protection that they need, during this time. So it's the surgical masks and the ventilators are another area that we're working on as well. As I mentioned in the presentation, General Motors has, stepped up and using their manufacturing facilities to produce additional ventilators, and that's happening across the U.S. Elon Musk, Tesla, they are working to do the same thing as well. But so the biggest shortage that we're seeing is in the medical field.
One quick last question from Will Sammy. With regards to masks, are there any restrictions on importing from outside the US? I mean, China is having massive production of these masks. So what is preventing US from importing from China, for example?
Actually, they are starting because that's where our supply was coming from, 95%. Outside of the U.S., with China being a larger share of that, and then followed by Mexico. So, from what I understand, Elon Musk, he just purchased some masks for the U.S. market through a approved supplier in China. So that is an option, but as I said, we need them, and so I know that the government would at least look at it as far as trying to secure more.
Thank you. That's the questions for today. So I'll now throw to the Minister for a wrap up. Thank you, Regina.
Thank you, Belinda.
Well, thank you, Regina, and thank you all of those who have logged in and for the questions. This is obviously the first of what I think will be many sort of briefings we have from Houston with Regina. We had one yesterday from Tokyo from Sally Townsend, and we've got some others planned over the next couple of days as well for their other markets. So thank you all for being involved. Please stay in touch. As Regina said, stay in touch with your markets and your customers. Keep reassuring them that we're here to help them and here to provide goods to them. We do have, when I'm jumping off shortly to the teleconference of Minister Birmingham, some support here locally now for air freight. I'm not quite sure how much from South Australia has been going to the US, but certainly, there's some opportunities now for South Australian and Australian producers to get their perishable goods into market with some support from the federal government. So thank you all very much for coming, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon.
Thank you, Minister. Thanks, Regina.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.